Welcome to the Coach Trap podcast with your hosts Greg Stein and Dan Williams. This is where we break down all those marketing myths, tell it like it is, and drop a few hacks to help you go from invisible to irresistible. No fluff, just honest truths and maybe some sarcasm along the way. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the second episode of the Coach Trap podcast that me and Dan Williams have been doing. So, Dan, really looking forward to this one. We're talking about PFP or profile pictures, and we've seen some really interesting stuff over the last year or two, haven't we? What's your thoughts on this? And any and I think the best way to start this, what's the most interesting one you've seen?
It's a good question. I saw a guy with his face upside down a few months ago, and I actually messaged him about it, and he's changed it since, which I'm fuming about. It was really good. He definitely stood out a lot.
Yeah, well, and that's part of it, isn't it? This idea of standing out, this idea of being a little different. I've seen some great ones as well. I remember once really laughing at a guy's banner where he had his truck in his banner. All his banner was his truck, and I'm thinking he must be so proud of that. So I thought, it's so interesting how people perceive it and that first impression that they want to put out, isn't it? And that's what it's all about, Dan, isn't it? It is first impressions, isn't it? It's the first thing you look at when you come across someone's profile.
So you can tell a lot of the time you'll see the the 13-year-old dropshipping like scammers. They'll always have Lamborghinis as their banners.
That's it.
You can see them from a mile away.
Yeah, we talked about this a lot in our book, haven't we? The pink Lambos in Dubai. Great stuff. And this whole thought process come up, didn't it, Dan, when we were mentoring one of our other coaches, and we were talking about what he is comfortable to post or not post, what he's comfortable to put in his profile, on his banner. And actually, a lot of it is obviously up to your own interpretation. But the idea of showing pictures of your family or showing pictures of your dog or your lifestyle, whatever, where do you stand with this? What do you reckon is the secret sauce? What's the best blend, do you reckon?
See, it's definitely different for everyone, and also depending on your industry. Like if you're a therapist, say, you would be more inclined to share more of your family because you're trying to attract someone who's more family oriented. But if obviously you're a personal branding guy like me, you don't need to share your family.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And we made a little poll, didn't we? Obviously, me and you were going on another podcast on March the 2nd, and we've made a poll. And I was looking back at some of the results, actually, of the poll. And the first, obviously, the different types were, Dr. Bravestone in Jumanji with his stare, if you like. The other one was the AI. The other one was, something authentic. And the other one was almost like a funny sort of picture, And actually, there was a variation in the answers, but the one that stood out more than most was the authentic picture. No AI, no filters, no nothing. Where do you stand on that? Because obviously we see a lot of AI pictures, don't we? When we're, especially on X, I think for sure. Where do you stand on that?
I personally don't like AI. I think if you're going to start a personal brand, you should be yourself. You don't need to use AI for content. You don't need to use it for your profile picture. Just leave it. Apart from obviously ideas, I use AI for ideas. But in terms of the profile picture, I would not recommend it.
It's a really good point. So for me, I've obviously gone for a black and white picture. And there's a reason behind that. One that was all about branding colors to make sure everything is synchronized, optimized, however you want to call it. And that was just advice I had as soon as I started, pretty much, was to change it and to go to something like that so it all looks the same. Do you agree with it? Or do you think it's time to maybe switch to something a bit more colourful? Where do you stand on this? Obviously, because colours are important. Branding, identification, being the same is important, being consistent. What do you think about that?
There are a lot of black and white profile pictures, but I think once you've established yourself, you would be more inclined to have a black and white profile picture.
Yeah.
But when you're just starting out, it's very difficult to stand out with that profile picture. you fully blend into the feed. People will skip you unless your content is amazing, which it probably won't be when you're just starting out. You know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Dan, you know I'm quite statistical in nature, and I know you love analytics. So
yeah,
obviously, you know, we're here, we're helping other coaches. We've got our community. We've wrote a book, and this is all about, you know, using our own experiences to help and shape others' fortunes. You know, help them get better. As I've been doing my research and looking over, there's a few things that really sort of stand out with profile pictures, you know, and stats. One of the most overwhelming things I've come across is that videos compared to, say, digital, you know, post whatever, are 200% more effective. So short form video, and that obviously leads quite well, doesn't it, into this chat that we're talking about, brand creation. You know, actually getting your face out there more. Eye contact, for example, was one of the things as well. So first impressions form in just 40 milliseconds. That was, you know, from evidence from Princeton University. I was doing that actually when we were looking at reviewing one of the coaches that we work with. 40 seconds, you're making an assumption, a thought process, you're making a conclusion on someone. That is so interesting, isn't it? You know, so fascinating. So what do you think are some of the essentials? Let's say if you were going to work with someone who's new, someone who is just starting up, and we know a few of these guys. What are some like simple rules that you think they should be doing?
Well, first of all, you've got to make a clear picture of your face. I hid behind a logo for about 6 months, and I just didn't grow on X. Called it a personal brand, but they couldn't even see my face. So you've just got to get out of that comfort zone sometimes.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of those. We see a lot of those, don't we, in our DMs and stuff, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. They come across just robotic. Like I'm less inclined to engage with them, even as someone who knows how hard it is to just get your face out there.
Yeah, this is interesting. 65% of visual content is remembered after 3 days compared to only 10% of written content. I think that is perfect, isn't it, in terms of what you've just said? You know, the difference between using a logo as your PFP or a banner, actually having your face, or a little bit more about your personality. Personality, isn't it? Is what this is all about. And I think that you're going to laugh at this. One of the rule of thumbs I use on lots of stuff, almost like, you know, we talk about the tick box formula, but I revert back to what it's like on dating websites. You know, what do I think most people will go for or like, right? Not that I'm out dating, I'm a married man. But 63% of dating app users dislike overly edited profile pictures, viewing them as inauthentic. That has got to be the best advice, isn't it, for, you know, the people on our group, the people who follow us, the people we talk about, is actually maybe it's time to move away from those AI pictures and those really over digital pictures and to own it, you know, to like, you know, to own who you are. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you see a lot of them, and they obviously think they're going to stand out with them. But what I'd say is all they're doing is making themselves look more like edited, less authentic. Like for me, my profile picture, obviously I've got a suit on, but my content is very different from that, which is different from what people will tell you. They'll say, match your profile picture with your content. I'd say do kind of the opposite. That's what will make you stand out.
Good point.
Like someone who's quite sarcastic, like my content, in a suit, that's quite different, isn't it?
Really good
it's memorable.
Point. Yeah, really good point. Okay, here's another one. And actually, this goes across to my next question. And I've been obviously reading back, you know, your part of the book, really intrigued by your part of the book. And you've talked a lot about other social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, you know, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is. Consistent profile pictures across platforms boost brand recognition by up to 80%. Interesting. Do you agree with that? Do you think that you have one profile picture, sort of like one profile picture fits all? Or do you think you can sort of like adapt and change it per different social media channels?
Absolutely have one profile picture. If you're trying to optimize tiny little things for different platforms with your profile picture and you don't have 6 million followers, you're wasting your time. spend it on content.
What a take home. I think there's some real interesting stuff there, isn't there? Already, we've identified, not just from the stats, but from, our tried and tested sort of strategies and stuff. Don't over edit your pictures.
Our failures.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't over edit your pictures, and be consistent across all platforms. Okay, next one. People with a smiling PFP are perceived as 10% more trustworthy. What's your thoughts?
That's interesting. I would say it fully depends on your brand. Like if you want to smile, smile. If you don't, then don't smile. I would say it's not massively important. 10%. It's not going to make a massive difference.
And that brings me on to my next point. Every post we write, everything that you do, isn't it? You're openly trying to annoy, or it will annoy 20% of people that read it. So 10% actually is sort of like a write-off, isn't it? Almost like you're only there to resonate with a few, aren't you? You only need a few to really understand your message and to get it. So that 10% almost is allowed, isn't it? And maybe that brings us on to another point, actually a bigger point, something we've touched about in the book a lot, trying to please the greater numbers, trying to please everyone. That doesn't quite work, does it? It doesn't quite work. And that's against being authentic, isn't it? Like with, talking about profile pictures, like the guy who said he had the one who was upside down. That's interesting. It's different, isn't it? It stands out.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the point, isn't it? Is to try to be a little bit different. Okay. Next one. Twitter user, or X should we say, users with warm coloured PFPs are rated as more extrovert and friendly. That is interesting as well. Starting to read into the psychology, what type of person someone is. And that brings me on to another point. We know, don't we, from looking at the stats and the analytics, that before someone buys, they want to see you 7 or 8 times across multiple platforms, they read different captions or whatever it might be. But that goes to show, doesn't it, that this PFP, the banners that you use, the first thing that someone sees in their, in your personal branding, is so important in creating a perceived personality, isn't it, of how someone's going to see you. Have you seen any funny ones of this over the years? Any ones that have stood out, or what the ones that really stand out for me are these like real pro man ones? The ones that are definitely AI, big beards.
Yeah.
Watching, and it's not them for sure, but it's this standard picture, isn't it, that we see a lot. What's your thoughts on those?
Again, don't use AI, please. If you're listening to this, I beg you, for your sake and my sake. I think the profile pictures that have stood out the most for me are the ones with massive like orange or green in the background. Quite interesting.
Wow.
I don't know why that is. Probably
I'm
some
gonna go away and
psychological
change
reason.
mine now.
Yeah, you should. But yeah, I think what you've got to do is look at the statistics and see what your target audience is more interested in, and just do that. It only takes a day. You don't need to spend years on like optimizing tiny little things. Just look at the statistics, see what they like, and do it.
It's really interesting. So, we talked about having the same profile picture across multiple sites or channels. They're all slightly different, aren't they? Like LinkedIn being almost like a networking sort of place. And I say X is the people. And Instagram, for me, is Gen Z, for example. But it's getting it right, isn't it? It's getting something that you're comfortable with when you look in the picture, when you look at it and you're comfortable with it. Really, really interesting stuff. So, but a big part of the book, and it's the first part of your section, isn't it? It is the first thing that someone sees. The first thing you've got to decide and choose is your profile picture. Is that that image that you're putting out, that person that you're trying to portray, to send out to a wider audience. Really, really interesting stuff. Any other sort of like stats? Any other interesting stuff? Any other points you think that our community or the people listening will find interesting in?
See, I actually haven't looked into the stats. I've just posted what I kind of want to post, and I've attracted the people I want to attract by extension of that.
Yeah,
I think that's that's just part of my strategy, really. But
Yeah,
it
well, and I
really
think
depends
that,
on
yeah, and that
depends on
says a
what you
lot
want to do.
about you, doesn't it? You know, like, you know, in your image, in the way that you portray stuff, and the way you talk, and the way that you talk to the people that we work with together, that comes out, and that is being authentic, isn't it? You know, that's what we are preaching through this book consistently, isn't it? But there's the other side, where me and you openly talk about leaning into your lion, where, you know, the difference between type A and type B people, type A being the Wolf of Wall Streets, the hustlers, the cold callers. You know, I know, Dan, you're a marketer, but the marketers, and the type Bs being the coaches, or I call them, you know, the lollipop ladies. But to actually be good as a coach, to get clients, you need to lean into your line. You need to step into aspects of that type A. So some of the stats are quite interesting. If it is going to be more effective, if it is going to get you more views, if it is going to, you know, people are going to perceive you a little bit better. Interesting stuff for sure. So obviously this podcast, Dan, isn't it, is about me and you know, giving some golden nuggets, some take homes for the people that are listening, you know. And also then to encourage people to go out and to read the book, to, you know, to do the course, to possibly think about sessions with us. You are there, and you're approaching, you know, you've come into the coach trap and you want to set up your profile for the first time. Okay. What are your biggest tips? How would you run them through it? What would you tell them to do? You know, imagine you're helping someone. What's the sort of what's the take homes you would want for them?
Honestly, the profile picture would be the top of my list. It'd take an hour max for you to get a decent profile picture, which is good enough for you to start posting. I'd say, secondly, the banner. I would like it to match that. It obviously depends on what your industry is. Like I saw a yoga instructor the other day who had just a forest as their banner, which is quite cool, quite peaceful, and that aligned with their brand. So obviously that takes 10 seconds to Google a picture of a forest. Or I've got, you know, the more statistical one, the more kind of promotional banner.
Yeah.
But it just all depends on your brand, honestly.
I've got another good point as you're saying that about using, you know, pictures, or, you know, stock pictures for your banners and stuff. Okay, we look at a lot of websites, Dan, don't we? You know, we obviously, it's one of the first aspects if someone wants to come to work with us to collaborate. We give them an overview of everything, you know, from their ex LinkedIn, website, landing pages, newsletter, everything. We see a lot. So the last 2-3 websites that I've looked at this week, I see a lot of stock pictures, a lot of you know, say like, you know, men in a suit in an office that isn't them, definitely taken from stock. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Are you pro that, to create that environment? You know, you talked about maybe the forest as you talked about there, or are you anti that? What fits into the coach trap ideal?
I would say I'm definitely anti putting any person that isn't you or your employees on your website. I don't see the need for it.
Love that. And
but with the banner,
yeah,
I would like to use. I don't see any problem with using stock photos of a forest or another object, as long as it's always you, because it's your personal brand at the end of the day. So you're not fooling anyone by putting some big bodybuilder on your website.
That's so true. And remember I said about the guy who had the truck, and all it was the truck on his banner. And obviously, you know, I was interested in the guy. I wanted to know more about the truck and the man. Interesting stuff. So we are saying no to stock pictures, aren't we? On banners, on websites, on landing pages. Really interested, because I see that a lot. And I'm saying over 90%, over 90% of the people I see are using stock pictures on their landing pages, on their websites, on their banners. And I think that's a real take home, isn't it? No stock pictures. Don't overly edit your pictures. Synchronize it across multiple platforms, and try and keep it on point to what you're trying to offer. Really.
If 90% of people are doing it, it's probably the wrong thing.
Yeah. You know, going back to the idea of dating websites and profiles for that, the idea of catfishing as well, that must happen a lot. You know, like someone has a younger picture, or, you know, an AI master picture, and then they realize that's not them. Imagine that for a discovery call, or the knock-on effects. You know, straight away, that's a red flag, isn't it? It's showing someone that they're not quite authentic. Losing trust. Nailed it. I think that's I think that's a great way to put it. Trustworthiness, for sure. Okay. So some really good stuff, Dan, and obviously we've created the coach trap. We've openly talked about this before, haven't we? We created a system, tried and tested strategies that worked. And this is all about giving some of this back, isn't it? Trying to help a wider audience, trying to, again, build authority. And I think there's some major take homes there. I think some of the people that are going to hear this are going to take on a lot, because PFP, I think, sometimes is misunderstood. I think sometimes people underestimate the importance of it. But actually, the stats, even though you said you're not, the stats aren't the biggest thing, they are overwhelming. You build first impressions in 40 milliseconds. Professional pictures get 14% more views. Smiling PFPs boost trust by 10%. Consistency across platforms is 80% better. Videos compared to digitals are 200% better. It is overwhelming, isn't it? It's about being authentic, not using stock pictures, and ultimately not falling into the coach trap, which we talked about a lot, haven't we? Dan, anything you want to finish off the episode with, or anything else you want to talk about?
I think the people listen to this, they'll know which one they are. There's two types of people. There's the ones who are obsessed with optimizing every little thing about their profile picture. And there are the ones that do not care whatsoever, and they're just going to use AI. They're not asked. I think, as with most things, the best place is in the middle. Don't go to an extreme.
Absolutely.
So you really need to just spend a day and leave it.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, I've got an even greater idea. Join our community, post it in the community group, and see what other people think. Almost.
Absolutely. Great plug there.
There you go, Dan. This is what this is all about, isn't it? We're here to help.
Exactly. You're learning as well.
That's it. So look, anyone who's listening, join our community. www.coachtrap.co.uk. There's a link for the community on X there, and it's free. The podcast is free. Join in, get some great advice, mingle with like-minded people, and start taking those steps forward. Don't fall into the coach trap. We've talked about this a lot, Dan, haven't we? And I heard another story last week about someone taking out a £12,000 loan for a marketer. Unbelievable. So we are anti that, aren't we? We are the opposite. We are trying to get people progress through authenticity. Dan, great stuff as always, and a pleasure to listen to Yoda. Talk his genius level advice and all this sort of stuff. So, how's the cycling going, Dan? Are you any more PBs or anything interesting on the horizons with that?
I should be going to Switzerland in the summer.
Wow!
If all goes well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting.
And also,
how about you? You go into the bit of cycling?
Like I said, I haven't done it in a few years. I would love to get back on the bike. I do have a Peloton, which I love. But again, the football team that I manage are joint top of the league. We look like we can maybe win it. And that leads in very well to this PFP chat, showing a bit of personality. Letting the people know a little bit more about you. And that's important in it, Dan, as well. So that's why I plugged that at the end as well, is I think that is maybe one of the most important points of this initial impression that you get on profile pictures, is you want to know a little bit about the person.
Yeah, definitely. And it does come across.
Absolutely. I mean, how many dating profiles do better with a dog picture? It's obvious, isn't it? It's obvious. It's right in front of your eyes, that sort of stuff. But Dan, a pleasure. Hope the cycling goes well. And we are going to jump back on, aren't we? Not next week, the week after. And we're going to talk more about the coach trap. Guys, get involved in the community. Feel free to message me and Dan personally. Check out the website. And remember, whatever you do, don't fall into the coach trap.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Brilliant.
Don't do it.